I was living in Orangeburg, and at the time I was a member of the Orangetown Jewish Center, and I asked Rabbi Krauss how come a Y didn't exist in Rockland. And he told me that there was a gentleman named Alan Eisencraft who wanted to start a Y, and that I should meet up with him and find out the answers to the question.
30 years ago, I called together 25 Jewish leaders who came to my home, and we had a big meeting in my living room to discuss whether we wanted a Jewish Y in the county. The answer was a resounding yes.
I had received a phone call from Alan Eisencraft, who had called me talking about interest in starting and developing a YMHA in Rockland County, and invited me down to an initial meeting at his house, at which time we discussed the needs, which were very evident that there really was no focal point, no central place for all of the Jews of Rockland County to meet. Everything was very factional, and there was a necessity to bring us together so we would be a Jewish community rather than just a community of Jews.
Of course, we all wanted a swimming pool, a gym, a big building, a big campus, and all the things that probably everyone had on the wish list. But then we had to deal with reality. We were starting with no money, and a federation had just been formed, and we didn't really know what kind of response we would get from the community.
We had 10 of us who were original founders, and we needed some money to start. So we each put in $5,000, and our state senator, Eugene Levy, we had a Jewish state senator, got us $50,000 from New York State. And with that initial $100,000, we started.
We originally were founded as a Y Without Walls, and then we found walls thanks to Mark Karsh and Bob Silverman, who helped give us our first location.
In October 1, 1988, on a Sunday morning, we opened our doors, and lo and behold, 700 people from the community showed up in the back parking lot for our grand opening. It was fabulous.
We had a one-room office, sent a bunch of kids to the Maccabee games, and then it just started to grow from there, and people started to find out about us, and we moved from there to another facility, and we started to have more and more activities going on, and it just kept growing.
But with the help of David Wynn, we developed programming where we were providing and servicing more people out of our 6,000 feet than many of the larger Ys in the area were servicing out of their full-scale buildings.
When my presidency began, there wasn't a Y. At the end of my presidency, there was a Y.
After my 2 years came Arnie Garelick, who really had a tough job because he had 2 presidencies simultaneously.
And when I was president, several things were happening. I think one of the most exciting was that Russia opened up their gates and allowed the Jews to come out. And in doing so, we had the opportunity of hosting the first Russian Maccabi team to come and compete in the United States. It was a truly unbelievable experience. When they came, they looked like refugees. They had no outfits, nothing to wear. They came with torn sneakers, torn clothing, and they were hosted by families in Rockland County. And by the time we left to go down to Baltimore to compete in the games, you couldn't tell which were our kids and which were the Russian kids. They were all wearing the same clothes.
After that, they had nobody else, so they appointed a man like me as president. See, that's how Jackie Mason does it, but he copied it from me.
2 of the most significant things that occurred during my presidency was the hiring of David Kirstel, who has more ruach and more ability and more energy than any 5 people you could meet, and has really pulled the cause together for so many people. The initiation of the sports program, the name change from a YMHA to a JCC-Y. It really was a period of transition and flux, and I think one that really helped steer the ship in the right direction.
I was fundraising vice president for many years before I was president, and that's when fundraising changed. I expanded it tremendously. It was, we had an average fundraising program with our standard fundraisers, and after I took it over, we became the national model for the JCC-Y, for mid-size agencies. They used us as a national role model for fundraising. When I became president, I was the first woman president of the JCC. And I always used to joke that I was at a disadvantage because I was the only president who didn't have a wife. By the end of my presidency, we were completely out of debt. We had a balanced budget. We were paying all of our bills on time, and we were financially strong and healthy. And every time I walked into the agency and I saw all these senior citizens working out and all these kids going off to their programs, I just felt great about that. It felt good to be making that kind of a contribution to this great agency.
I took over at a great time in the history of the agency. I followed Linda Russin. So when I took over, I was able to focus a lot on building upon the processes that Linda put in place financially and business-wise, and expanding the programming for the agency. The very first event that took place during my presidency was We Are One, which was a community-wide festival, Hanukkah party in support of Israel. It was held at the Rockland Community College Fieldhouse. And it turned out we had over 8,000 people come through for the day. And that really was an event that, in my opinion, put us on the map. And while I got credit for that event, I really didn't have that much to do with it. The person who was the chair of that event was Brenda Lender.
The best part of it for me is seeing my children participate in all of the programs that the JCC-Y offers that we didn't have growing up here in Rockland.
I knew that my kids weren't going to see the fruits of my labor, but what I never realized and never even thought about when we were working on the Y was that my grandchildren were going to use it. Mommy and Me programs, baking programs for the kids. This is what the Y is about. Whether it's for my kids, my grandchildren, or somebody else's kids, somebody else's grandchildren. When we're eating or come to work out or whatever, and there are a ton of cars in the parking lot, I said, this is wonderful. This is what we have worked 20 years for, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years along the way.
Good job, Scott. Elijah.